Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. The government's 3 years performance, when the Prime Minister spoke about it, he mentioned the fact that the way the COVID had been, especially COVID was tackled by this government, had been internationally, was something that was talked about internationally. He talked about economic indicators. He talked about the fact that, of course, as far as the current account deficit was concerned, it was 20 billion and now it's 1.8 billion. He talked about the foreign currency reserves, the fact that they were significantly up, the tax collection was also up. He talked about the fact that as far as the economy is concerned, things certainly seem to be on the right track. He talked about different projects like the Naya Pakistan Housing Program, SRS Program, Kamyab Jawan Program, all of these programs in the development sector that the PTI government had launched and the fact that they were doing well and in the next 2 years were expected to do even better. He talked about the fact that the track, as far as the track of the government is concerned, as far as the economic situation of the country is concerned, things seemed to be on the right track. But the question really for the people of this country is, when will this trickle down? When we talk about international indicators, when we talk about the fact that, of course, as far as the economy is concerned, things seem to be looking up. Are we also talking about inflation, price hike? And when will we see that kind of trickle-down effect? We will be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the overall performance in this 3 years and what the government expects in the next 2 years. Of course, the last year being very much the election year. What kind of challenges will this government face, also politically, but economically also? And what can we expect in the next 2 years? I have with me Amir Hussain, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Also, Dr. Afnanullah Khan, Senator with PMLN. Thank you for being with us. Amir Saab, let's, before we go on and discuss what's happening as far as the economic, political situation with regard to the last 3 years with PTI government is concerned, let's hear a report that we've compiled on what the Prime Minister spoke about and performance as far as those 3 years is concerned.
After the completion of 3 years in office, Prime Minister Imran Khan highlighted the key achievements of his government, including marking a journey of a stable economy and several other development and welfare projects at the Jinnah Convention Centre in Islamabad. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting issued a 255-page 3 years performance report, which gives valuable insight into the efforts of each ministry and division that are facilitating the common man to achieve the vision of Naya Pakistan. Besides defining the baseline of each sector, it also focused on the key objectives, initiatives, planning, strategies, legislative policy framework, and the projects in the pipeline. The PTI-led government faced various inherited challenges, including financial stability, poverty, inappropriate education system, and inadequate health facilities. However, during PTI's 3 years, the struggle to achieve said goals could be seen despite sustaining the COVID-19 pandemic through the smart lockdown strategy. Pakistan has recently been ranked by The Economist as the third best performing country for handling the pandemic. The administration of nearly 30 million vaccines across the country and self-sufficiency in manufacturing of personal protection equipment are also key achievements for the government. To uplift the living standard of the common man, the PTI-led government had launched projects like Naya Pakistan Housing Program for affordable accommodation to low-income groups, SRS Program for social security, and the Kamyab Jawan Program for imparting skills to the youth, which would help them get employment in the future. The report mentions the establishment of National Command and Operations Center, which has helped to formulate a coherent response against the novel coronavirus. The 3-year performance report is available for public information at the official website of Directorate of Electronic Media and Publication.
Right. Amir Saab, so what's your take on this? Do you think that, how do you see the last 3 years of this government, and what do you feel as far as not only economically but even otherwise? We'll be talking political challenges for this government also, and also, the kind of initiatives that they've launched as far as, social as far as the youth is concerned, particularly because he was very categorical in mentioning the youth and the fact that, of course, to put them on the right track, so to speak.
Well, I think we have to look at 3-4 different dimensions of the current government 3 years progress. One is the economic front, the macroeconomic front, where we can see that there is an upsurge in the foreign reserves. And also we have seen the budget deficit has been reduced for the first time. The exports have been increased. That's one dimension, that is we call the macroeconomic level. But when it comes to the national economy and the trickle-down impact on the common people, for example, the rate of inflation has gone up for the last 3 years. The economic growth in real terms has gone down. And also we have seen the job creation was one of the promised areas of the government, which is not taken up, which has not been taking off.
When you say economic growth in the real sense, what do you mean?
The economic growth in terms of the growth of GDP overall, in terms of the volume of economy that has to go up. If we compare Pakistan GDP currently, the growth of economy in the regional perspective, for example, Bangladesh, India and other countries, we are far behind, because it doesn't seem that we have a long-term planning, because we see 4 finance ministers were changed. The FBR chairmen have been constantly changing. But I think this is there is one particular concern that the government is trying its best, but it has to be backed up by long-term planning, which requires a team which at least stay for 2-3 years, plan, devise, strategize, and then deliver on those particular promises that Prime Minister was making in the beginning. I think that area needs to be focused more on. In despite the fact that we have a number of challenges, for example, the coronavirus has impeded the smooth growth of economy, but though we have done very well in terms of dealing
handling
with
of the crisis, right? But let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Senator Afnanullah Khan. Ji, Senator Saab, would you agree? You think that as far as the overall situation is concerned, as far as the international indicators are concerned, which this government keeps talking about, things are on the right track?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I do not agree that the things are on the right track. I mean, what I would say is that PTI has always been very good at marketing their, I mean, I wouldn't say success. I mean, they can even turn around success, failures into success, and then market it in a way as if like they have achieved something. For instance, let me give you an example. The government has been saying that, and Imran Khan has been saying that as well, that their COVID-related performance has been very good, and the international community actually recognizes it. But the fact is that if you look at the Bloomberg rating of countrywide rating of COVID-related issues, Pakistan has ranked 45th in the world. This ranking, and Norway was ranked #1 in the world. India is ranked number 44th in the world. So to say that we are performing the best is just like making a fool out of people. The reason why one of the index was good was primarily because we have a large population. So we have like about 220 million people. So if you give cash incentives like Benazir Income Support Program or SRS program, then you go very high on that particular index, because of course the population is really big. And similarly with,
so you're
for
saying
instance,
that it's just a kind of manipulation of the way things are being looked at, rather than any real facts and figures.
Yes, I mean, you can go and ask the normal people of Pakistan about inflation. You can ask people about employment.
But let me ask you. There is a lot, as far as statistics are concerned, there's a lot of statistics thrown back and forth, not only by the PTI government, but also by the PMLN. So which statistics do we pick when you talk about, you think that, let me ask you this, you think that the current account deficit has now been reduced? Do you think that the foreign currency reserves are up? Do you think that the tax collection has gone up? Let's talk about those things.
Let me give you an example about tax collection. When PMLN government came into power in 2013, the total tax collection was about 1,900 billion rupees. When we left it about 4,000 billion rupees. Now in the last 3 years, that 4,000 billion rupees has increased from 4,000 billion to 4,700 billion. So there's an increase of 700 billion in rupee terms. But if you take it into dollar terms, it has actually declined. So if people are analyzing Pakistan at an international level, they will be looking at it from a dollar perspective figure, and that has actually gone down. And the same thing if you look at any economic figure, and the most important of all the economic figures is the GDP growth rate. And because the GDP growth rate has the imports, the exports, the remittances, the everything actually gets reflected in the GDP growth rate formula. And you look at that, we after 1952, first time in history of Pakistan, we actually went minus GDP growth rate. And to say that it is because of COVID is again is trying to make a fool out of people, because in 2010, if you remember, there was a huge flood in Pakistan. One of the worst floods we have experienced in our history. In 2013, when PMLN government came into power, there was huge problems with regards to load shedding and security. We were going through one of the worst phases of security in our history. There was a bomb explosion every day. So to say that Imran Khan was the only one because there was some natural calamity, this is again not right. Let me just give you some figures. I mean, our budget deficit, for instance, is going to be about like 4,000 billion rupees this year, as per the budgetary estimates. And I believe this is actually an incorrect assessment, because I think it will go up to around 5,000 billion rupees, and that will be again one of the biggest deficit in the history of our country. So look at the poverty line figure. When we were in power, there were about like 23% of the population was living below poverty line. Now there are about like 39% of the population is living below poverty line. So there are about like between 2.5 to 3 crore people
But the
who have
Prime
gone
Minister said that
below
he
the
had
line.
to clean up. But the Prime Minister said that he had to clean up your mess.
He maybe he has got some ideas in his head which have got nothing to do with reality. He can think like that because he's not going to, one thing we know about Imran Khan is that he is a very big prolific liar. He is a compulsive liar, and he has
Okay, let
shown
me
that
come
not
back to you.
once
I have
but
with me
when.
Dr. Zarka from the PTI. Dr. Zarka, we're talking about the performance, the 3 years performance, and the fact that the Prime Minister spoke in some detail about the achievements of this government as far as economy is concerned also. And as far as economy is concerned, so we've been talking about the fact that when will we see a trickle down effect as far as inflation is concerned, price hike is concerned, because of course the indicators are important, but as far as the people are concerned, they really obviously want the inflation to go down, the price hike to be controlled. When do you think that will happen?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Mahrukh. It's very interesting to hear all these numbers being given by my colleague Afnan. And it's also very interesting to remember that PMLN has been in government in Pakistan for almost more than 2 decades on and off. And their own expert, Hafiz Pasha, said that they fudge numbers, and we all know that Mr. Ishaq Dar used to fudge the numbers. So the numbers that he's giving in comparison, they're very nice to hear, but you have to look at the reality of the people. If the PMLN government was so good, why did the people vote in to bring PTI? I mean, they were doing so well. The question that begs to be asked is why? Why did the people not keep them there? So there's something very fishy there in their entire narrative. And
see, but they have that,
really,
they have that whole answer. I will let, I mean, I don't want to be anybody's spokesperson, and I'll let Senator Afnan answer, but I think they have that whole vote ko izzat do, narrative going. If you talk about
yeah,
whether why.
So the
PTI
narrative goes on, and I'm kind of very disturbed when he's calling the Prime Minister. The words he's using for the Prime Minister, it's very disrespectful. If he has some facts, he should come out with those facts. The Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, I mean, it's very low to talk about who told the lies. They can't even decide if Avonfield apartments belong to whom, where they're living. The family is living there. The Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said in Parliament that I will give all the documents for the Avonfield apartments. His daughter said, I have no property in Pakistan, leave alone abroad. And she's the beneficiary of the Avonfield apartment. So please, what he is saying for others, when you point a finger at someone else, four fingers are pointing towards yourself. So I really did not like the remarks
please
he
stay
used.
with us.
Let us talk
I will
about.
just come
We
back to
can.
you. I'm going
Yeah.
to go to Amir Hussain, who's also with us. Ji, Amir Saab, how do you see? I mean, we of course there's this back and forth exchange,
Yeah,
which
I think there's a lot of figure fudging as well, as we believe. But when you look at the overall performance, you have to look at the life of people, the common people, and how the citizens feel about their well-being, their welfare, the ongoing inflation, and all that. I think, to me, honestly, it's very nice time now to realize and sit together and do some long-term planning. The PTI lacks planning. That is a fact. Because we have a lot of figures. Well, our foreign reserves have improved. That is acknowledgeable. We are doing good in SS program, which is a social protection program, which is also true. But we have not been able to develop something sustainable which could actually transform the economy into into a long-term prosperity.
But was it okay?
Proposition.
So in terms of a goal to look at in the 3 years of this government, do you think it was perhaps too much to expect that they would be any government would be able to do?
Well, I think the promises were made. Too many promises were made when the government was coming in. So, well, for example, the housing scheme was there. There was
the jobs
creation
the
was
jobs,
there,
right.
and the energy crisis, and we were not able to create even a single megawatt in the last 3 years, and our energy distribution system is completely flawed. We had surplus energy, for example, 39,000 megawatts were in our national grid. The problem was now to focus on improving the distribution system, which was not work out. So that's why we have now energy crisis, not because we don't have energy, but because we don't have a distribution system that is working. So I think a transmission system has to be improved. And also, if we look at the overall, 12 million people have lost their jobs last 3 years. Part of it goes to COVID as well, we know, we understand. But also, it could have been reverted if there was a planning and we didn't change people too, reshuffling the cabinet, changing the finance minister, changing the other ministries. I think you have to give a roadmap, a growth trajectory for the economy for at least 3-4 years' time. And you see that if it's not working, then you have to analyze, do reflection, and go forward.
Right.
So that reflection is lacking somewhere.
Okay, let me come back to you. Ji, Senator Afnan, it's a lot of what the Prime Minister said was also like, again, before, like I said, that they had a lot to deal with. There was a lot of as baggage that the government had to deal with. And of course, he acknowledged the fact that when he came in, things were so bad that, he was very concerned. And to be able to deal with things at that stage where, your government left them was a huge task.
This is again, I mean, building into the argument that I was saying that the Prime Minister is a prolific liar. This again is a big lie. If 5.8% GDP growth rate is something that is bad, then when our government came in, the GDP growth rate was 2%. So this is again, this is just like, let me just prove it to the whole audience that he is continuously lying. Is that he said that he's going to build 5 million houses. Now there is a Naya Pakistan housing authority that he has built, and that authority is going to build around 26,000 houses this year. So if they go with this pace, it will take 833 years to build 5 million houses. That's again a very big lie. Now coming on to 1 crore jobs, he said that he promised that there are going to be 1 crore jobs. And we know for a fact that there are about, and you can check it with international agencies, that there is unemployment has gone up in Pakistan. So there are like about 3 to 4 million people who have actually lost their jobs during the last 3 years. Again, I would say that this builds into the argument that the Prime Minister is a prolific liar. And he himself actually says that he's a liar, because he says that he's a U-turn. He's a guy who continuously takes U-turns, and this is how he managed to become the Prime Minister. And so basically, he's basically a wheeler dealer kind of a guy who basically looks just to get some short-term benefit from whoever is coming his way. and then that's pretty much the planning of PTI as well, because the leader behavior is actually reflected on the whole political party. Now coming on to the corruption, which my colleague mentioned, um, uh, Alima Baji, whose father was a government servant, just like Imran Khan's father was a government servant, has got properties in New York, in London, and she got an NRO from Saqib Nisar as well, which is on record. Most of their ministers are indulged in corruption. I can actually take one by one their name. All, if you look at the energy ones, the ones, the food security one. I mean, you name the guy, and I can tell you what corruption is going on right now. And nobody is actually bothered. Look at the prices of pharmaceutical of all those
Right, okay.
medicines that people
Let
have
me
to
come
use.
back to you. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Zarka. Ji, Dr. Zarka, of course, barring, it doesn't, calling names or not, the point is, I think he's talking about price hike as far as things like medicines are concerned. He's talking about the fact that, whether there is figure fudging involved or not, I mean, that is back and forth, which back and forth PTI, PMLN, that's irrelevant. The point is, how do you see, in your opinion, when do you think these kind of issues like price hike, inflation, will be, there'll be some relief for the people?
Thank you, Mahrukh. I'd appreciate if you'd give me some time to answer.
Gigi,
because
please.
the last time you didn't let me complete it. So if I don't speak, then I cannot answer your questions properly.
Gigi.
So looking forward, this government, if you accept everything that all your speakers have said, what this government has been able to in the last 3 years, give the poor man a health card. In 73 years, the poor people of Pakistan have not had the kind of health coverage they are getting now. A health card that gives them coverage for 10 lakh rupees to each member of the family is something unheard of even in the Western nations. When you come to the Panaga and the social welfare concept, it is amazing. You're giving the poorest of the poor a place to sleep at night and 2 meals a day. So a laborer who's earning 800 rupees to 1500 rupees every day saves about 400 rupees from that by staying in the Panagas. Then forget about the housing. I listened to what Afnan had to say about the housing. So let's for a moment accept that. What is happening in Pakistan is a change of paradigm. The people of Pakistan, 60% of our population is below the age of 30, and these young people are being given hope in the way Pakistan, for the first time in 73 years, has now taken a different stance. It is not saying, yes, hello, we are the slaves and you're the masters. No, we are telling the superpowers that, look, we want to be your partners in peace. We do not want to be mercenary soldiers for you who will go and fight your wars. That by itself has given the Pakistani nation something to hope for, something to stand up. For the first time in 73 years, you're promoting your own tourism. This country has 12 seasons. It is a beautiful country, but we've never ever promoted our own tourism, and it's doing really well. The big tsunami, Pakistan is the 8th most affected country when it comes to climate change. And the 1 billion tree that have been planted, and that has changed the landscape. We are being recognized internationally. When we are talking about price hikes in particular, people who claim to know about economics and then say that COVID is nothing, what are they talking about? The entire world is going into depression. The Western countries and Europe, US, they're having huge depressions. All the countries of the world have had to take loans. So economies are really under a lot of pressure. And in these situations, in this scenario, if Pakistan is coming out with a positive GDP, that is amazing. Only in the billion tree tsunami, we have given jobs to more than 100,000 people, and about 70% of them are women. Women have come up and they are setting up their own nurseries for the tree plantation. So the change coming about in Pakistan is amazing. The one single national curriculum we have never been able to make a nation out of our people. We keep dividing them on linguistics and on their ethnic background. For the first time, we are coming up with a single national curriculum. That is
Right.
amazing.
Dr. Zarka,
So these,
I think you'll be happy that I've given you a lot of time. I want to go back to Senator Afnan. I let him answer. Ji, Senator Saab.
For instance, I mean, I would say that what my colleague said, that maybe that this is the first time that Pakistan has taken a stance in front of the world powers. It might be true from, if you look at it from a Musharraf era point of view, where he actually basically did whatever US was asking him to do. But that is not actually correct if you look at, for instance, the 90s and our previous tenure, because we did our nuclear blast. 5 nuclear blasts were done in the greater interest of Pakistan, when the whole world didn't wanted us to do it. But our Mia Muhammad Nawaz Sharif Saab took the stand, and he did it, and it is unprecedented in our history. So to say that it has never happened in 73 years is again incorrect. Now, if you look at the GDP growth rate of the region, we are just ahead of Afghanistan and below the rest of the region. You can check it right now. So to say that the whole world is in depression and we are the only ones who are growing is again incorrect. And especially the region is growing much faster than we are growing. Now, coming on to the corruption part.
But you're saying that we're growing nevertheless. You're saying that the pace at which, so you're admitting the fact that at the pace at which the other countries in the region are growing, some of them, we're perhaps not matching the pace, but we're still doing that, right? We're still growing. So, that sort of supports what she's saying. She's saying, whether at the same pace or a greater pace, the point is that we're going, we are growing, but for the lack of
there's one thing that we have to be careful over here. Our population growth rate is around 2%. So our economy, if you have someone who does actually nothing all day, it's going to grow around 2% anyway. So if you grow to 3%, you're basically almost doing nothing, because it will take forever for the economy to double. So it is extremely important that we have to maintain a growth rate of 6 to 7%, and we have to maintain that growth rate if we want to become a developed country in the next 20 years. That's one thing. Secondly, I just want to put some light on the corruption, the narrative. When our government came in 2013, Transparency International ranked Pakistan at 121 ranking. After 5 years in power, it came down to 117, which is again, the low you go, the better it is. And when the government of Imran Khan came, who is a certified angel, and he has never done any corruption, he is unable to do in fact any corruption. The corruption index is now grown to 124, which is so what it basically says is that the Transparency International is saying that the Imran Khan government is corrupt, and they are not only corrupt, they are prolifically, they're very corrupt. So this is something which is like, this is the numbers are there, the international bodies are there. You can spin something so much. I mean, I know Imran Khan and his cabinet and his dozens of representatives come on TV and they try to cook up stuff, but in reality, the people are suffering.
Okay, whether they're spun or cooked up or not, I mean, the reality of it, I think some of it, as you've also acknowledged, I'll come back to you, Ji. Amir Saab, how the reality of it, whether we say that everything, of course, can't be spun also, as far as
we have to do some objective analysis as well, because there are some things that government has done pretty well. For example, the plantation plan, the environmental consciousness is very high. And we have also seen, as I said, the SAS and Social Protection Program is a wonderful initiative. We have also seen the increasing international, our foreign reserves, which is also good. And some investment in construction industry is going very well. But at the same time, as we say that there are then other flip sides as well. For example, the government has to now focus on a sustainable long-term planning, which means that all these initiatives are become beneficial to common people. Now, well, we understand that if you start growing at 3 or 4%, then you have to reduce your burden on social protection, because now you are spending money on social protection, but your economy is going down. Now you have to make a rational choice. At the end of the day, one day will come when your economy is not growing, and you will not be able to spend on social protection even. So this is the time that we have to think about how to turn it around. because we see that if you want to improve the growth, you have to improve the environment for doing business. For example, for textile industry, one. Secondly, our medicine industry, the leather goods, the sports goods, which we had the comparative advantage to do business. And now the energy prices are really high in Pakistan. Pakistan is one of the most expensive country per unit cost of energy in the South Asian region. So you have to bring down the cost. But I can't blame only Imran Khan for doing that, because we have signed such agreement in the past that we are paying capacity charges without consuming
which is what which is what he said, which is what the government has said.
Now
this
we
is
have
their narrative.
that is fine. But now we have to think about transforming this energy sector from this thermal plant to hydropower potential. Pakistan has 45,000 megawatt power potential from the northern Pakistan. It has more than 40,000 megawatt from the solar energy. So why we are not going towards that direction? We are not going to there. We are not going there. It means that there's lack of planning as well.
Right,
so we have to focus on that.
Let me come back to you. Dr. Zarkar, do you think that perhaps, because when the government came in and the Prime Minister admitted the fact that he came in and he realized that there is a lot of, as far as he was concerned, he had a lot to deal with. And not only in economy, in every sphere of governance. But do you think maybe because there was an expectation, things were much worse than he expected, and hence there has been all of this, ministry change, ministerial swapping, so to speak, change also, over the positions have been again and again changed. Do you think that that is perhaps the reason why things maybe are not at the kind of pace that he would like?
Thank you, Mahrukh. I would just like to correct what your analyst just said about hydroelectric power and solar power. Hydroelectric power is something that Pakistan should have benefited from. And in the last 50 years, not enough, in fact, no focus was made on the developing hydroelectric power, which is the cheapest electric power. You can get 2 to 3 rupees per unit. Solar power, of course, is expensive to install, but yes, it should be, and wind power as well. But right now, after 50 years, Pakistan is under Prime Minister Imran Khan, has put out the plan for 10 mega dams. And in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll have the first of the Memon Dam will be there. And so some of the the power issues should be sorted out. But we must remember that it is the IPPs and the really sorry contracts that we set up with the IPPs under the PMLN and the PPP governments.
So what do you attribute the constant swapping, the constant change in the ministries also? Do you think that could be one of the reasons for perhaps, we need to now look at sustainable long-term planning, which is what, what Amir Saab is talking about?
Ji, if you will let me speak. Thank you. The issue is, of course, there's going to be changes. There are going to be changes when you have the kind of people we have, the kind of systems and institutions that have been developed over the last 3 to 4 decades, particularly, where institutions were made to work for families, where people who are working for government are actually working for political parties, where you employ people who have no professional background, but they are employed because they are with party A or party B. And at the end of that, then you end up with the kind of budget that Pakistan has, where you're spending a huge amount on pensions. You're spending on a budget of 8 trillion. With the 22nd IMF program, you're spending almost 30% on repaying your previous loans. So
but
with
Dr.
this kind of it will take time.
Look, I have to interject. I have to ask questions. That's why I'm here. So the point is that when you say that these people are, they are politically motivated or whatever, when you swap ministries, how does that change? I mean, of course, you have confidence in the same people. If you put them in another ministry, doesn't mean you've lost confidence in them, right?
Yeah, it is. I would be very interested to know if no ministries have been changed in the past, and this is the first time that ministries have ever been changed in any government. I definitely remember with the PPP government, how many times the finance minister was changed. Even their prime minister was changed 3 times. And the same kind of thing happened with PMLN. So this is politics. Political positions are changed. They are swapped. It is actually the entire governance which needs to be sorted out, and that takes time. When you have spent 70 years in bringing Pakistan to the point where, if you remember, in the 60s, Korea wanted to learn from Pakistan how we were developing. But come the 21st century, we have seen how Pakistan is almost defaulting every few years from the IMF, repeated IMF programs that we are taking, because we have, as when we are talking of corruption, there is an about $10 billion are taken out of Pakistan every year. And this is not, this has been going on for all the years, for all of the champions of anti-corruption that we hear. Mr. Senator Afnan and his father was in politics as well. What did they do when they were government? It is good to ask these questions, and I'm very happy that, and PTI is very happy to be accountable. We would like to be asked questions. We agree that if there is any corruption anywhere, then bring those people out. Bring the, if Senator Afnan has any details, he could not take a single name. He should come out with the names. They should take out legal proceedings. They must
let me go to him now. Let me answer. Let me go to him and let him answer that.
The allegations is you need to come out with facts. Come out with the facts. We will be very happy to entertain it. What facts does he have?
I think we'll have to go and let him answer that. Ji.
The fact is that Transparency International is saying that Imran Khan's government is corrupt, and it is much more corrupt than the previous governments. So whatever happened in the last 74 years, this government is much worse than that. And we are not saying it. It is the Transparency International who is saying that. Again, and the second thing is that never there has been a government where there has been so many different finance ministers. There has never been a government like that. This is the first time. We have had like
that has to do with issues of governance which have permeated the entire system, and therefore it needs a major rehaul.
This has nothing to do with it. This has everything to do with incompetence and corruption of Imran Khan and his cronies. And Imran Khan is involved in hand in corruption with whether it's pharmaceutical, whether it is sugar, whether it is wheat, pick anything. He takes a cut in everything. His whole of his family is involved in these kind of corruptions, and yet.
Okay, I think there's a problem with this
audio. Talk about how they are going to eradicate corruption.
Okay, right. Ji Amir Sahab.
Well, I think we have to again look at the institutional perspective. What we are lacking for last 2-3 decades, most we have democratic governments, but we have not been able to focus on governance and institutional strengthening. If you don't make accountable institutions, inclusive institutions, we can keep blaming each other, most of the ministers now with the Imran Khan were also with Pakistan People's Party. They also served the Musharraf regime. They also served, some of them also served the PMLN. So it means that the ministerial
that these are the same people who are,
So sometimes they act well, sometimes they don't perform well. The reason is that institutional strengthening is needed, which we are not focusing. So the real thing now is all the political parties and all with these political parties in themselves bring democracy. Intra-party democracy is one thing, and then also going forward with a long-term plan for a national building project, which we lack. The partisan distribution and the pernicious polarization is so strong that parties would not sit together even for the national cause. Now it is time to discuss about institutional strengthening, democratic dispensation, inclusion, and those people living below poverty line. Now 40% of people in Pakistan are below poverty line.
Right. I'm running out of time. I want to go to Dr. Zarqa. Dr. Zarqa, there is, of course, as far as reform is concerned, your party has come with the agenda of reform. The Prime Minister himself is a big advocate of reform. He is the one, like you are saying, he's acknowledged the problems, the failures of our system, the systemic failures as far as, across the board, if you talk about the whole system. Do you think that the government will be able to and willingly, I mean, are they willing to sit with the opposition and work on that kind of reform?
I think if Pakistan has to move forward, inshallah, which is it is moving forward, everyone does have to sit together because we are all Pakistanis at the end of the day. If the country moves forward, all of us will benefit. And we do need to sit together. We do actually sit together, except when it comes to personal interests. And that is where the difference starts coming up. That is where the opposition, it becomes difficult to deal with. However, having said that, the parliament is moving forward, but if the system is rotten by itself, then it becomes very difficult to go against the system, and that is one of the biggest challenges.
The system is not an individual. It has to be, if it has to be changed, if there is reform that is needed, then of course, I mean, that has to be undertaken by all the parties together, right?
Yeah, but you know, if you look at what the PTI government, one last comment, if you look at where we have achieved and where we have not been able to give so much of results, the difference is where we have worked out of the system, for example, with the tree plantation, with the SAS program, with the health card, we have performed really well. And where we had to work in the system, we have not been able to do so well, which is like the reforms, which is like the governance. So the system does not allow you to move forward, and that, I totally agree with you, is something that has to be reviewed. It should be rethought, and that's the only way we will be able to make things better for those things that have not improved to the extent that we wanted to improve them.
Right. Senator Saab, your quick comments before we close. We're really running out of time.
I think that it's not a problem with the system, it's a problem with the people who are running the system, and it is their incompetence and corruption which is basically making the system rotten. The system is not rotten. It's if you have incompetent people trying to regularize their own stuff, trying to do corruption, then you cannot blame the people who are running the country for the last 74 years. I mean, for instance, Imran Khan got his state regularized for 1.2 million rupees, while everybody else got their houses demolished. So this is not about the system. This is about the corruption and the endemic incompetence of this government.
Right. Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Amir Hussain Saab, thank you for joining us. Dr. Zarqa, thank you for being with us today. Dr. Senator Afnanullah Khan, thank you for joining us today. As far as issues of systemic failure is concerned or across the board reform is concerned, of course, the government will have to sit with the opposition as far as the numbers are concerned, the way that things are in the assembly at this time. Let's hope that that reform agenda can somehow be maintained. We can go back to that. We can work towards that, whether it's police reform, whether it's whether we talk about like electoral reform is now an issue with the Prime Minister having written to Shehbaz Sharif Saab, whether the opposition and government can sit together and work on jointly towards a better Pakistan, a Pakistan that will be in actual sense reformed, the systems will be reformed so that we can't go back and blame the system. We can't go back and say that, the system is corrupt and therefore we are where we are. Let's hope that that is possible. Let's hope we can do that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.